Alright, so here's this week's weekly Nightfall. It's the Scarlet Keep. I'm doing a solo flawless master run. The weekly modifier for the Nightfall is Togetherness, and the daily is the Lightning Crystals. So the Togetherness is kind of the major factor here. You need to have some way to heal yourself. So it's basically why I ended up on Stormcaller. I can match the acute arc burn with my arc abilities, which I'll be able to spam thanks to Lightning Crystals. I'll also be taking more damage from arc because of Lightning Crystals. On top of that, you got the acute arc burn, which means I take 50% more arc damage than normal. Lightning Crystals adds even more, and the enemies, the majority of the enemies in this Nightfall are doing arc damage to you. So this is one of the Nightfalls where you really feel the burn from the enemies. Even if arc wasn't the acute burn, the wizards just melt you like on any burn. It doesn't matter. They just blast you with arc. It's like a non-stop stream that just melts you really quick. So you could definitely feel it a lot more in this Nightfall with the acute burn and with Lightning Crystals. But it's not a big deal because I'm running my my crutch Stormcaller build with the stag. So if I sit in my rift, I'm healing myself, and then B, I've got extra damage resistance. I didn't even go with an arc resist mod on my chest plate. I do have the elemental resist that comes with the seasonal artifact, so I do have a little bit of arc resistance from that, but it's not as much as like a full arc resistance mod. I think it's like 5 or 10%, so nothing huge. And then as far as the Stormcaller build with the stag, like the mods, I ended up using the, is it counter charge? It's the one I'm using high energy fire for 20% more damage when I'm charged with light. So I'm using the seasonal artifact mod that makes you charge with light whenever you stun a champion, which is a really good mod because you don't have to plan ahead of time, you know, to go and pick up a well or get charged with light before you engage it, before you start an encounter. You don't have to worry about wasting your stacks of charge with light on adds before you deal with the champion, because no matter what, when you stun the champion, you're going to get charged with light. So as long as you're focused on the champion, you're pretty much always going to have 20% extra damage outside of your opening shot. So it works out pretty well for that. I'm also using elemental armaments for arc wells with seeking wells and elemental charge. So those are also making me charge with light. So my uptime on high energy fire is pretty frequent throughout this Nightfall, I'd say. I didn't keep a close eye on it because as I mentioned, you know, when I'm dealing with champions, I don't have to worry about it. You know, I'm always going to have high energy fire. Dealing with ads, I'm not really worried about it either because they're just ads. But yeah, I do have that extra damage, which is nice. And then I'm also running, so I'm running the Unstoppable Grenade Launcher. I'm running the Lingering Dread from the Duality Dungeon with auto-loading holster and blinding grenades, which is my favorite type of grenade launcher for blinding. If it doesn't have auto-loading, then I don't want to use it, basically. Ideally, I would have one with chill clip, auto-loading, and blinding, but I still haven't got that roll to drop. I do have some blinding chill clip rolls, but none of them with auto-loading. So I would 100% prefer to have auto-loading and blinding without chill clip, because even though it'd be nice to have chill clip, you can only really freeze a target if you hit them with 2 shots. So you know, it's kind of a different rhythm if you're going to be going with like a freeze and a chill clip type style of ad control. But I don't really need it. I guess I could just blind anything. That's the main function of the weapon. That's all I needed to do. Just pull it out, blind enemies, put it away. I could pull it back out a couple seconds later, and I will never have to reload it. So it does the job perfect, especially for these wizards. Because as I said, these wizards melt you in this Nightfall. It doesn't matter if it's Master or Grandmaster, probably even Legend. Even if you're like 20 overpower, I imagine they would still melt you. Like, they're not approachable. You can't just run up to these wizards and take care of them so easily unless they're blinded first. But they put their smoke cloud down, and their arc blast is just like super strong. And it's hard to evade it as well. At least with like these boomer knights and the barriers, they got a pretty solid arc blast from their weapon as well, but you can at least outmaneuver them. And then other than that, I'm using Trinity Ghoul, which, as long as you've got the lightning rod procced, which you do just by killing an ad, and you kill anything and then you've got a lightning rod, it one-shots barriers, which I didn't realize until I ran it here, because I don't think I've really ran Trinity Ghoul as my barrier weapon before. Usually use it more for ad clear, and then I figured typically for using bows on barriers, I just go with something with explosive head, because it's like a guaranteed 2-shot. Without explosive head, you know, it might be 3 shots. I'm not sure, but I was kind of thinking Trinity's not going to be that great for barriers in this, but it's just as good as Wish Ender. It's better than explosive head on a legendary bow if you've got the lightning rod proc. So you'll see like quite a few times I save. I don't waste my lightning rod on the barrier until they put their shield up, and then I can one-shot them. And then just the ad clear potential of Trinity Ghoul is just really good. I'm also using the fragment that gives you ionic traces for arc weapon kills. So, and harmonic siphon, which is basically just, you know, giving my super back a little bit faster by picking up orbs of power. That's really the only function of harmonic siphon. I just had a free energy slot on my helmet, so I decided to put that on there. So Trinity Ghoul is producing orbs. It's producing arc wells, which is making me charge with high energy fire, charge with light, and it's producing ionic traces to get my abilities back faster. So my uptime on my abilities, especially with lightning crystals, is really good. It was fun to play. And then as far as my heavy goes, this is the main struggle I have with this Nightfall, is you can't really go without solar, and you need something decent at that, because you need to break the wizard shields. They're all solar, and then you need to kill the wizard like right away. And they're notorious for getting behind cover after you break their shield, and then just hiding, and then by the time you get a shot at them again, they've already got their shield back up. So super annoying. And because I wanted to use Trinity Ghoul just for, like, you know, the ad clear potential and just the overall damage it was doing, I decided to go with solar on my heavy, which typically, if you're doing, like, if you have to equip weapons that are that do not match the acute burn, you know, to take care of match game shields, then typically I would do that on a primary, or on, you know, my first or second weapon, not on my heavy, because normally you want you want to reserve your heavy slot for the most damage potential possible. You know, the ads aren't a huge deal, so you can get away with using other weapons on ads, but when you're dealing with champions, when you're dealing with bosses, you want to use your heavy and you want it to do as much damage as possible. So, you know, like going with something like Storm Chaser, or, you know, whatever arc heavy that you like, that would be a really good option in this Nightfall. But with that said, I had to make a sacrifice somewhere to take care of the wizards, and the boss isn't that tanky anyways. Like, you don't 100% need an arc heavy to take the boss out. The boss is it's not a tanky boss compared to a lot of bosses, so I figured I could probably just make do with Cataclysmic. And in my last video, I was talking about the Cataclysmic that I wanted to craft. I was going to make a second one because I didn't want to use 4th times bait and switch for a lot of these solo Nightfalls, Weekly Witch Queen campaigns. I just feel like 4th times the charm and bait and switch is just something that you use against in long encounters against single targets, when you're doing, you know, multiple seconds of DPS. Not on champions, or, you know, just basic yellow bars, unless you're planning on sinking 4 shots to proc 4th times to actually benefit from it. Most of the time, you don't need to shoot 4 shots at ultras or champions to kill them. So bait and switch is nice, but bait and switch is a pain to proc. It's not hard to proc if you're just up against a single boss and you're going to be doing like 20-30 seconds of damage to that boss. Yeah, go ahead and cycle through all your weapons, do damage with them, proc bait and switch. You're good to go. It's amazing for that. So I'm holding on to my 4th times bait and switch for that reason. But for doing these Nightfalls and stuff, I wanted box breathing, and I went with no distractions. So I'm basically getting the same damage buff as bait and switch, but I don't have to proc bait and switch. All I have to do is aim down sight for like a second, and then box breathing procs, and it's something like 33% damage. So it's really good. And the one thing I don't like about box breathing on my Taipan is I missed quite a few shots with it, despite having that full 1.5 seconds to aim, because of the flinch. But this Cataclysmic has no distractions as one of the perks. So no distractions with box breathing. They proc at basically the same time, aim down sight, and then what no distraction does is it gives you like insane flinch resistance. And you'll see up here when I shoot one of these barriers, I do it through like a whole bunch of thrall storming at me, and normally you'd be flinching all over the place and you would never be able to hit your shot, let alone a crit. So yeah, I was actually, this is my first run using this new Cataclysmic that I just crafted. So I've got enhanced no distractions, enhanced box breathing. I highly recommend it. I think it's probably one that's slept on, but if you do a lot of solo stuff, taking care of champions, short damage windows on bosses, ultras, you know, box breathing is a really good perk. It's also good on ammo economy, so you don't need to fret about not having 4th times the charm, because like I said, you're not going to be procking 4th times the charm most of the time in these things anyways, because you're just you don't have to deal that much damage to most of the targets. So you're not benefiting from 4th times. But box breathing, you're basically saving ammo anyways because you're doing so much extra damage. I think this is the barrier that I was talking about, or maybe not. But you can see how much I was just getting shot there, and I was still able to land a jump shot crit on the barrier. But yeah, so this is it's a pretty good Nightfall. I've done my GM run already in a group, and it was definitely, at least on GM, like you got some freedom for loadout. But if you're doing this solo and if you're doing it on master, then you have to contend with togetherness, which is a pain. So togetherness is not a grandmaster modifier; it's strictly for master. Which I know, like, grandmasters are all the hype, but it is still pretty fun doing the masters because they have the unique weekly modifiers that grandmasters don't have. And togetherness, attrition, they're probably my favorite ones to deal with, just because it forces you to get creative with your loadout. But it's kind of a double-edged sword because, like, when I knew Scarlet Keep was coming up this week, I thought in my head that, okay, well, I really want to use my striker because I haven't done much arc titan this season. This is an arc burn, and I thought it'd just be a lot of fun to spam pulse grenades. Yeah, pulse grenades, because they nerfed storm grenades, and if you've watched a lot of my content anyways, I was running pulse grenades a lot of the time. I feel like they were kind of slept on. You get more pulse grenades than you do storm grenades. You always have, even though it has a longer cooldown, because it just feeds you ionic traces as it does damage, whereas storm grenades don't. Storm grenades, you have to equip a fragment to get an ionic trace for killing something with your storm grenade. So pulse grenades just do it intrinsically with Touch of Thunder. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. But yeah, so I had my build all ready to do this on striker, and then I realized togetherness was the modifier, so I said forget it. If I'm going to do it on Titan, then I basically got to do Void or Solar. Solar being the better choice, because then at least I can use my abilities to break the wizard's shields. But I just wasn't having that much fun with it, because I've already done a couple of Sunbreaker videos this season, or at least one. I did Seraph Shield, and I thought Sunbreaker would be better on this than it was, but when I tried doing it, I figured, well, I could run all arc weapons. I can use Radiant for my damage buff, and that way I can benefit from the acute void burn, benefit from 25% damage from Radiant, and I can just rely on my abilities to take care of the wizards. Wrong. You could, don't get me wrong, but it's not as easy as shooting them with a weapon, because, like I said, the wizards are unapproachable. So you can run up to a wizard, you can even blind it first, and then you can just use your throwing hammer, hammer strike, whatever, and take care of the wizard that way. It'd probably be a little bit easier if you had Syntheseps to do throwing hammer, but without it, you have to hit them like 5-6 times with your throwing hammer, and during that period they're gonna become unblinded, and they're gonna throw their poison cloud down on you, which is gonna stun you and make y'all slow. And then if you can't get another blinding grenade off, or if you lose your hammer because they're just floating around up in the air, it's pretty easy to miss, then you're screwed. You're stuck in their poison cloud, and they blast you with their arc, and then you're dead in a second. So it was definitely not the play. And then I even tried using fusion grenades instead of a healing grenade, with Lorelei Splendor, I figure I'll be fine for healing. Because of Lorelei, I could just run fusion grenades, and then it's super easy, because then I could just stick the wizards with a fusion grenade. Well, wrong again. I'd say unless you're using fastball, and even then, your chances at sticking a wizard with a fusion grenade are like almost slim to none. Even blinding them first, there's something wrong with the tracking on like the magnetism on the fusion grenade. And I've noticed this before in some other missions where you would think, the whole purpose of a sticky grenade, like magnetic grenades on void, fusion, is you could stick a mobile target, right? If the target's not going to stay in the radius of your grenade, like a pulse grenade or a solar grenade or a vortex grenade, then you got to stick them with something while they're flying around. Then you know that they're going to take 100% of the damage from that grenade. But the tracking on it just sucks. Like, you miss 90% of the time unless you catch them when they're dead still. You aim directly at them and you're close enough to stick them with the fusion grenade. So that wasn't practical at all either, unfortunately. So I basically gave up on Titan for doing this solo flawless master, because I just wasn't having fun. It wasn't practical. And then so I figured the next best thing to use that would be fun and would be good for damage would be Stag Warlock, and I just so happened to come on today in Lightning Crystals with the modifier. So yeah, it worked out. So you can see Lightning Rod there just one-shots the shields. So if you didn't know, when you do this elevator section, I've heard that there's a cheese where you can just do the emote in these pillars to hide yourself from the enemies, but you really don't need to, because if you look up, you can see which doors are open. The doors that are open, that's where the enemies are. There's going to be one side that is pretty much all solid doors. Whichever side that is, go behind the pillar that's next to that side. And then you'll only have to deal with, 2 acolytes at a time at most. So super easy. And so there's 3 sections where you're going up the elevator. So you just gotta check, like, each section. Basically, they're not all the same spot that you want to be behind. So even though we have the Unstoppable mod on grenade launchers, I'm not a huge fan of it, because it's actually harder than it seems to stun them with it. Like with the blinding grenades, you pretty much have to hit them dead on with it. And then if you miss your stun, then you're screwed, because you have to reload your grenade launcher, and by that time the Unstoppable may have closed the distance on you, and things could end pretty quickly. So, and because of the proximity of that Unstoppable there, and the ad density in here, I just wanted to melt them as quick as possible. I could use Cataclysmic as well, but I was trying to conserve my heavy ammo as much as possible for the boss fight, because pretty much have to use heavy on the boss, and there's a couple solar wizards in the like the second wave. So it can be kind of hard to see, so you can just aim down sight and just kind of check. So at this point I've pretty much figured that, okay, yeah, I'm on the right side because those doors are all closed. So then you could just pick one side of this little pillar, and then you could just focus on the enemies that are gonna show themselves to you. Another good bow to use on this Nightfall is the Tripwire Canary. That's I tried doing a few runs on it. I think on GM I ran Tripwire. Really good. I've got mine crafted with enhanced Dragonfly and enhanced explosive head, and it's top notch for sure. Like the AOE from Dragonfly is really good. It's almost like a mini Trinity Ghoul if you hit your crits. Obviously it doesn't have like the same forgiveness where you could just shoot the ground and do like waveform arc damage at enemies, but it does good AOE damage. So you kind of see how well box breathing works here too. I can basically manage the ads and then just pull out my Cataclysmic, ADS, and then, you know, do burst damage. A little bit here, a little bit there. Don't worry about spamming it so much. I would just, because you're not really in a rush to melt the boss. You just want to damage the boss enough to bring out the wave of ads, and then you got to deal with the ads before you damage her too much again. Because then she'll go immune, and then you'll get another wave. So there, just a couple seconds ago, she has this like AoE push attack. She'll mark the floor out. If you see that green marker on the floor, get out of there. Like, I was honestly lucky to survive that because I just got kind of thrown upwards a little bit, not so violently. But if you're like on the edge of her circle, or even if you're not inside the circle but you're close to it, it'll push you out sideways, and you can get thrown with such speed that, you know, you'll get tossed into a wall and you'll die just from hitting the wall. That's happened to me before. So if you can, try and avoid them as much as possible. But that kind of middle section back here where I keep putting my rift down, not where I'm at right now. I'm not worried about the boss using her attacks right now because she's immune. But when she breaks out of her immunity, I try to go to the middle, to that pillar right here. Because if she does her push attack in the middle, I've got an arch above my head and I got another big pillar behind me. So if I go upwards, I can kind of come back down easily. If I go backwards, I hit the pillar. If I'm outside of that middle zone, then I can get thrown off the map. Not only that, but this middle section is just a good spot to strafe left and right to take care of the ads from either side. So the Arc Soul buff that we got this season is pretty darn good. Like, I would say Stormcaller is a very viable subclass to go with, whereas like last season it was the least viable of basically all Warlock classes, all classes. Like, it was not that good. But yeah, the Arc Soul I think got a 50% damage buff or something like that, and an increased fire rate, or one or the other. Either way, it just does crazy damage. Okay, so I was a little bit reckless there with those two unstoppables. I knew I knew that it was their turn to come out next, so I was basically prepping for them. But I was probably being a little bit reckless by staying right there in the middle. I'd say it's a good decision to melt one of them, but it could be risky using Chaos Reach too, because then you're just kind of stuck there in midair doing your Chaos Reach. You can't cancel the animation, at least not that I know of. And you don't have any movement, like you're just frozen, you're like a sitting duck. So if the other unstoppable had come behind me, because I didn't know where the second one was, he could have easily flanked me and then just killed me even while I was in super. But I got a little bit lucky there, took the first one out. The second one came from the same direction. I missed my my stun with my grenade, so I had to kind of panic and back up to the pile of bones. That is the one kind of safe zone where you can go and take a breather. Honestly, you could do the whole boss fight from that pile of bones back there. And then I got a little bit reckless at the end there too, but I got lucky. So we'll call it a solo flawless. But anyways, so that's this week's Nightfall. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, that'd be greatly appreciated, and leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.